What do you want to talk about? It is our promise that we will do our best to stand inside your vortex and call you this way. And if you are too far from the vortex, you won't hear us. We'll just annoy you. So we won't call you forward at all. If you're too far from the vortex, it will be annoying for you and annoying for everyone who's listening in. So as we're reaching around the room for you, if you have something that you want to talk about and we feel that you are in the vicinity of the vortex where there is a possibility of bringing you in relatively easily, those are the conversations that we will have today. We want you to understand that if you are somewhere on this emotional scale where fear and anger and depression are on the far removed end of resistance, and love and appreciation and friskiness are on the other end, where depression and fear indicate your feeling of powerlessness, and joy and love and appreciation indicate your feeling of empowerment, on this emotional scale with all of the emotions in between, the doorway to this vibrational vortex that we are talking about is somewhere between hope and belief. So if you're in the range there, then it's easy to call you in. So the fair warning that we are giving you is that in all that you are living, you've launched these rockets of desire and you've put them into your vortex of creation. And they are being tended by the larger part of you. They stand as present tense. And this is the thing that we really want you to hear. What you have launched forward, when you know what you don't want, you know what you do want, even though you're speaking of what you don't want, the equal and opposite desire goes forward. And the source within you rides that rocket of desire and holds that spot. That's what the evolution of all species is about. That's why life gets better and better and better for all beings, for all consciousness at all times. And so as we are visiting with you, even though you may have something going on, and clearly you do, there are all kinds of vivid things that are happening in your experience, and much of them you like and much of them you don't want. In other words, Jerry and Esther have a magnificent life. As we tell this story, there are glitches in their vibration and there are glitches in your vibration. And that's really what we want to talk about. We want to talk about how to work the glitches out of your vibration. How to bring yourself consciously into alignment with what you really want and who you really are. Because there is the way you gain control of your experience. You have to give up your effort at controlling the uncontrollable. Jerry and Esther have befriended so many people at that campground, thinking that they would have an inside scoop on how the campsites were assigned. And it never works out because no one can buck their current. In other words, you cannot receive from anyone, even very well-meaning people, something that defies the vibration that you got going on. You got one choice and one choice only, and that is to line up with what you want by giving more attention to it than the opposite. So, your animals are not as creative as you humans. They are also much less resistant. So humans are much better at sifting through contrast and launching desires than the animals of your planet are. But the animals are much more likely to be in the vortex. So the cells of your body are more like the beasts of your planet. They are not holding grudges. That's why recovery from illness is often associated with slumber. That's why people often go into comas and recover from things otherwise. In other words, your physical apparatus really gets a head start on reclaiming vibrational balance every night that you sleep. So imagine this process. Imagine having a day that's not all that great, but getting in bed and deliberately trying to withdraw your thoughts from what was bothering you and focus upon something that you can bask about, like maybe even the comfort of your bed. And imagine falling to sleep as best you can in a sort of more basking perspective, and then slumbering where you withdraw consciousness from this physical apparatus and time-space reality. And then awakening in the morning and deliberately, and it's not hard to do, reclaiming the basking that you were in before you went to sleep and taking it further by working on some things that you appreciate. Then getting out of bed, and we'll do some focus wheels here today, doing a focus wheel or two to clean up some vibration that has been sort of raw and ragged, and then moving into a list of positive aspects and getting on a rampage of appreciation, and then moving into your day. Now, follow us here. Then the next night, doing the same, and the next night doing the same, and the next night doing the same. Within a very short time, far less than 30 days, we're not kidding you even a little, you could release the majority of resistance that you've been harboring, and anything that was not sitting right in your physical apparatus. In other words, you would give the cells of your body the perfect vibrational culture in which to find perfect balance, just with that one simple process. Because it is only the awakening the next morning and the returning to resistant thought that keeps your cells from reclaiming their complete balance even in one night's sleep. You following? Yep. A few nights of deliberately releasing resistance and then going into slumber and giving the cells of your body all of that time to find their balance. And then another night of releasing resistance and going into slumber. But here's the thing. Every night you do that, but every morning you undo it. That's what's happening with most people. Every night, your cells find their balance, and then you remember what was bothering you the day before. So you are literally reestablishing resistance every time you come back into consciousness. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Provided attention to that newfound request, and the universe expands because source energy is on that request. Now that's really a big thing to understand. Now, the next big thing to understand is that as those in your current now reality are sending those rockets forward, this vibrational reality is expanding and is full of better and better and better requests. When someone's rude, you ask for them to be nicer. When someone's sick, you ask for wellness. So this vibrational vortex of well-being expands, and source gives undivided attention to it. Now here's a really important thing to understand. The new energies that are coming forth, who are the consciousness that are the new infants that are being born now, they come from that vantage point of well-being. When someone croaks, we try to be as disrespectful as we can about the death experience, since there is no death. When someone releases their consciousness here in this physical body and reemerges into the non-physical, they don't bring those worrisome, lackful thoughts with them. They become what life caused them to become, and it is from that vantage point that then new consciousness is born back into this physical experience. So as a result of that, feel the power of that. Millions of people, billions of people sifting through and asking for improvement, source holding the improvement. People are croaking and so forth, and new ones coming in are understanding the fresh, new, well-being perspectives. So now there's the other side of that. When you know what you don't want, you know what you do want. We just explained to you what happens with the what you do want part. But there is something that happens with the you know what you don't want part too. It goes into the thought form bank in the sky. It doesn't matter what you call it. It remains in this physical realm, and it doesn't have anything close to the power because source isn't behind it. There's not a source of evil. There's just the spin-off of man's lackful thought. And so if you could stop watching television, it would peter out pretty quick. In other words, it really would. It would. If you weren't keeping it active with monuments and historical documents and all of that stuff where you keep reliving the negative past, then it would eventually just peter out. In other words, it peter out in the sense that proportionately speaking, it wouldn't amount to nearly as much as the thoughts of well-being that would predominate. So the reason we put it to you in this way is because we are not acknowledging that there is no existence of it. We just want you to understand what it is and the power that it doesn't have, and your choice of whether you are a match to it or not. And so that's why we're saying to all of you who are so interested in finding the reality of things and trying to find the rightness of the reality and sorting out all of the components of life on the planet, we say, oh, what a big job you have, first of all, and what really a waste of time it is to try to sort it all out and put it into good piles and bad piles, when what you really want to do is let life cause you to expand and then do the only thing that is necessary or that you can do or that is of value to you or that will help you fulfill your reason for being, and that is line up with who life has caused you to become. Mind your own business and don't try to sort out all of that outside the vortex stuff. But we think it is important in the context of this conversation of demons and devils and all of that kind of stuff is that the worst that can be out there is your lackful thought about things that are the opposite of what you want. And in combination, every lackful thought that has ever been thought, even if it is all gathered together, while it could give you an uncomfortable time in your bedroom, if you were in the vibrational vicinity of it, it has no power, cannot assert itself into your experience, can only come by invitation, and you are only an emotional movement on the emotional scale away from being out of vibration with it anyway. Helpful? So here's how it works. You were source energy before you came into this body. Now, you don't remember that. Some of you speculate it, and some of you sense it, and some of you have enough resonance within you to know it. But for the most part, humans don't have any real connection with who you were before you came forth into this physical body. And we're not really big proponents of that anyway, because before you came into this physical body, you were source energy. But even though you are now in this physical body, that part of you still exists. So present tense, it's not something that was. I was non-physical consciousness before I became present physical person in this physical body. The correct way of understanding it is I am non-physical energy while at the same time I am in this physical body. And if you can accept those two vibrational perspectives or beingness or vantage points, then and only then will you understand what your emotions are telling you. Because your emotions in every moment are the blend, sometimes better, sometimes not so good, the allowing of the blending or the resisting of the blending of who you really are. And the more you're allowing it, the friskier you feel, the more exhilarated you feel, the more passion and clarity and stamina, the more vivid life is, the more love and joy and appreciation you're feeling. But the more you pinch that off, which is what resistance is, which is what thinking thoughts that are counter to who you really are and what you really are knows, when you think those resistant thoughts, then the emotion that you feel is the pinching off, letting you know that you're not fully flowing in the way you intended to. Negative emotion that feels like fear or anger or resentment or disappointment or any of those negative emotions. So the better you feel, the less you are resisting who you are. Now, a more positive way of saying that is, the better you feel, the more you are allowing the wholeness of who you are. But the reason that we want to say to you, in a way that you can really hear it, the better you feel, the less you are resisting who you really are, is because it's just that resisting thing that you've got going on that is keeping you from who you are and what you're wanting. Because while you are here in this physical body and you are exploring the variety that surrounds you, you are launching these rockets of becoming, and you are, the larger part of you, far and away the larger part of you, is becoming, from our point of view, present tense, has become, is already what you're asking for. So while you're in this body launching these rockets, the larger part of you becomes it. But you sometimes, in fact, quite frequently, don't let yourself flow in the direction of what you've actually become. And that is what negative emotion is. That's why negative emotion exists. Life caused you to become more, and you're not going. Not right now. Because you're still beating the drum of why you ask for it. I really, really need it, and it's wrong that I don't have it, and those other ones over there have got it, and I don't think it's fair, and when am I going to get my share, and I really want it now. And so, as you are observing life, there are plenty of things that are happening today in your life that are not exactly as you want them to be. But if you could understand that in all of that living of life, you've been asking for improvement, even if you are only a one-celled organism, you've been asking for improvement. You're far more than that. You're genius, leading-edge creators. As you are asking for more, that asking has already actualized vibrationally. And if it had not, then negative emotion would not be possible. In other words, if you had not expanded beyond what you are allowing, you would never feel negative emotion. Or if you have expanded and you are allowing the expansion, you will feel positive emotion. But if you've expanded and you're not allowing the expansion, then you feel negative emotion. So, a lot of times the negative emotion you feel feels like it's someone else's doing. They're doing that to me. That right there explains to all of you the reason that it's nobody else's fault. And if